Zanille Mackay's smoothed the fabric of her dress as she stepped into the chic restaurant in Pretoria, her heart fluttering with excitement and nerves. Today was meant to be a celebration. Her tech startup had finally secured a major investment, and she wanted nothing more than to share this victory with her family. The sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting a warm glow on polished tables set with sparkling glasses and silver cutlery. Everything screamed success, and Zanille felt proud. Her parents greeted her with big smiles, arms wide for hugs, their joy genuine. But as she glanced at her sister, Nomvula, a subtle chill cut through the warmth. Nomvula's eyes flickered with a sharp, calculating glint, and every so often, she gave Zanille a look that made her stomach tighten. Nomvula's jealousy wasn't new, but it had a way of making even the happiest moments feel fragile. Zanille tried to push the unease aside, laughing at her father's jokes and sipping her sparkling water, when her phone buzzed in her purse. She discreetly slid it out under the table and froze. The message read, "Stay calm. They're recording you." Her pulse spiked, and a cold wave of fear ran down her spine. She had to stay composed, smile, sip, laugh, but inside a storm was brewing. Someone was watching, waiting for her to slip. She set the phone down slowly, forcing her mind to focus on the celebration in front of her. Every laugh, every toast, every familiar face felt slightly different now, tinged with a shadow of caution. Today's perfect family lunch might not be so perfect after all. Zanille stirred her glass of water slowly, trying to keep her mind off the cold tension radiating from Nomvula across the table. She remembered countless moments from the past, memories that now made this lunch feel heavier than it should. Nomvula had always had a way of putting her down, masking jealousy as humor. She remembered how, at last year's family birthday party, Nomvula had smirked while saying, "Oh, Zanille thinks she's so clever with her little startup ideas. Let's see how far she really goes." Everyone laughed, including their parents, who never seemed to notice the sting behind the words. Zanille had smiled politely then, hiding her embarrassment, but inside she had burned. There were other moments too, Nomvula spreading whispers about Zanille's achievements, claiming they were exaggerated or the result of luck rather than hard work. Zanille remembered hearing relatives gossip. "Yes, she's talented, but don't let it go to her head." Even family friends sometimes repeated Nomvula's half-truths, treating them like harmless observations. Zanille had learned to stay calm, to ignore the barbs, but every word had chipped away at her confidence, slowly like water on stone. Now, sitting at this fancy table with a celebratory lunch in front of her, Zanille couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't just another family gathering. Nomvula's eyes darted around, measuring reactions, nudging comments that sounded like jokes but carried hidden edges. Even the waiter, a cheerful young man, lingered a little too long near Nomvula's side. Zanille's mind raced, recalling all the subtle ways her sister had tried to manipulate situations before, and a sinking suspicion grew in her chest. Something about this lunch felt orchestrated, like the laughter, the toasts, even the decorations, were part of a stage built for her. Her parents laughed at Nomvula's teasing, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension. They hadn't realized how sharp her sister's words could cut or how carefully she could plan an embarrassment. Zanille forced a polite smile, raising her glass for another toast, but the knot in her stomach tightened. She began scanning the room discreetly, noticing the angles of the tables, the placement of decorations, and the way some of the staff kept glancing in their direction. It was becoming clear, this wasn't just lunch. Someone wanted to see her falter, to make her look foolish, to twist her successes into mockery. Zanille's pulse quickened, but along with it came a flicker of determination. She had worked too hard, fought too many battles, and come too far to let a carefully hidden plan shake her. She would stay calm, play the part of the cheerful daughter, while quietly figuring out what her sister was really up to. Today, Zanille realized, the stakes were higher than she had ever imagined, and she couldn't afford to underestimate Nomvula again. Zanille's phone buzzed again under the table. She slipped it out and saw another message from the same unknown number. "Stay alert. Look around." Her stomach tightened, but a small surge of relief hit her. Lindai was already in her corner. She knew Lindai wouldn't let her face this alone. The message included a tiny link, and as she tapped it discreetly, her screen lit up with a real-time feed from a cybersecurity app Lindau had built. Zanil's eyes flicked across the restaurant, pretending to adjust her napkin while subtly scanning the corners, the light fixtures, and the decorative plants. That's when she saw it. A small, almost hidden camera tucked near the ceiling, angled perfectly toward their table. Her heart skipped a beat. Every laugh she had shared today, every toast, every word of pride about her startup and hard work could be recorded. Someone was trying to capture her life, her achievements, perhaps to twist them into gossip, leverage, or ridicule. Her mind raced. This wasn't just harmless jealousy, this was calculated. Nomvula had always wanted to have the upper hand, but using cameras to record private family conversations. That was a level of betrayal Zanil hadn't fully expected. She realized the quiet flattery of her parents, the casual toasts, and Nomvula's playful digs weren't random. They were the perfect cover while someone, maybe her sister, maybe someone else, tried to create a record that could embarrass or manipulate her. Zanil's fingers danced over her phone under the table, sending quick updates to Lindau. She described the camera's location, the waiter who lingered suspiciously, and the way Nomvula's smile sometimes didn't reach her eyes. Lindau replied instantly, guiding her step by step, checking for hidden devices, monitoring network signals, and even tracking unusual phone activity in the area. Zanil felt a mix of fear and empowerment. She wasn't defenseless. She had an expert helping her, and she had built a small toolkit herself for situations just like this. As she sipped her sparkling water, Zanil's mind ran over all the conversations she had had over the past few months. Funding meetings, investor calls, private messages, and even casual remarks about her company's profits. The thought that someone could take all that information and twist it against her made her stomach churn, but it also sparked a steely determination. She wouldn't be a passive victim. Not today, not ever. She glanced at Nomvula, who was chatting animatedly with their parents, unaware, or pretending to be, that Zanil knew something was wrong. Nomvula's confidence, her smug little glances, only fueled Zanil's resolve. Every subtle smirk, every sly remark, was now ammunition in Zanil's mind. She would turn this around, and when she did, there would be no denying who had tried to manipulate whom. For now, she stayed calm, smiled politely, and let the restaurant buzz continue around her, all while quietly gathering evidence and preparing her next move. Zanil felt the tension in the air thicken as the lunch went on. Nomvula, with that familiar smirk, leaned just a little too close and whispered loud enough for distant relatives to hear. "I guess some of us are just born lucky. Not everyone can have investors throwing money at their little ideas." Laughter bubbled around the table, polite but hollow, and Zanil felt her cheeks heat up. She took a slow breath, forcing a calm smile, sipping her water like nothing had happened. Inside, her mind was racing. She knew better than to react, not here, not now. Under the table, her fingers moved quickly across her phone. Lindau was online, eyes on the situation in real time. Zanil typed brief messages. Nomvula escalating, waiter acting odd, camera angle suspicious. Each time, Lindau replied with reassurance and instructions. Watch the movements, note the cameras, stay calm, and don't give them the reaction they wanted. Nomvula wasn't subtle. She continued, sprinkling sharp comments like pepper over a dish. "Oh, Zanil, your tech company is doing so well. I almost forgot how long it took you to figure out a single useful app." The words were designed to embarrass, to make her look foolish in front of family friends she hadn't seen in years. But Zanil stayed composed, nodding politely, making small, graceful gestures, all while mentally taking note of every detail. Then little things started to confirm what she had feared. The waiter, who had been hovering near Nomvula a few moments ago, adjusted his apron and pretended to wipe a glass, but his eyes kept darting towards Zanil's table. And then, as she shifted slightly to get a better angle, she saw the camera again, this time unmistakably pointing directly at them, perfectly aimed to catch every expression, every word. Her stomach clenched, but she didn't show it. Zanil realized this lunch wasn't just a family gathering. It was a stage, carefully orchestrated to provoke her, embarrass her, and maybe even trap her with her own words. Nomvula's jealousy had turned calculated, and the setup was real. But instead of fear, Zanil felt a rising sense of clarity. Every insult, every laugh, every sly glance from her sister was now evidence, not a threat. She smiled faintly, sending another quick update to Lindau. Camera confirmed, waiter suspicious, Nomvula escalating. Standing by. Then she raised her glass for a toast, her eyes locking briefly with her sister's, hinting subtly that she was aware of the game being played. Nomvula froze for a fraction of a second, her confident mask faltering just a little. Zanil knew the tide was turning. Today she would stay calm, stay smart, and let her sister's own schemes unravel, all while keeping her dignity intact. Zanil felt a quiet surge of control as she slid her phone out again, pretending to check a message. Under the table, her fingers moved to open a small app she had secretly designed months ago, a legal safeguard she never thought she'd need so soon. The app scanned the room quietly, detecting wireless signals and hidden devices, mapping out any unauthorized recordings. Her heart thumped in her chest, not with fear, but with a growing sense of power. Within seconds, the app pinged, confirming her suspicions. Live audio and video feeds were active, transmitting directly from hidden cameras in the restaurant to an unknown source. Zanil's pulse quickened, but her face stayed calm, smiling politely at her parents as they chatted away. She realized just how serious this setup was. Every word she had spoken today, every subtle detail about her startup, her achievements and her financial moves, could have been captured, twisted, and used against her. Nomvula, across the table, laughed a little too loudly at her own joke, glancing at Zanil with that smug, self-satisfied look. Zanil met her gaze briefly, raising an eyebrow just slightly and letting a small, knowing smile slip. It was subtle, just enough to hint that she was aware, without revealing the full extent of what she knew. Nomvula's expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly masked it, trying to maintain her confident front. Underneath the polite conversation, Zanil's mind raced through strategies. She could confront her sister outright, but that would give Nomvula time to recover or make excuses. Instead, she decided to use the knowledge quietly, letting it guide her next moves. Every smile she gave, every toast she raised, was now part of a careful dance. She would let Nomvula believe she was still oblivious, while the truth waited, ready to be revealed at exactly the right moment. Zanil's fingers continued sending quick updates to Lindau, typing in shorthand, confirmed live feed, cameras active, stay ready. Lindau's responses were calm and precise, guiding Zanil as she monitored the restaurant discreetly. They worked like a silent team, invisible to everyone around them. As the lunch continued, Zanil leaned back slightly, sipping her water and making small, casual remarks about her company's upcoming projects. Each comment was carefully measured, designed to sound casual but to show her confidence. She watched Nomvula's subtle reactions, small shifts in posture, tightening of lips, a fleeting flicker of panic in the eyes. The knowledge of the hidden cameras didn't terrify Zanil, it empowered her. She realized she wasn't just the target here, she could turn the situation around. By the time the main course arrived, Zanil was calm, composed, and quietly in control. Nomvula might have thought she had the upper hand, but Zanil now held all the pieces. The confrontation had begun, and this time she was the one writing the rules. Zanil took a slow breath and let herself relax into the rhythm of the lunch, but this time she wasn't just reacting, she was in control. When a relative asked how her startup was doing, she smiled confidently and leaned in, describing recent milestones, new investors, and exciting projects lined up for the next quarter. Her words flowed naturally, and instead of feeling nervous or rushed, she felt a quiet thrill. Each sentence was a reminder of how far she had come, how much she had built with her own hard work and vision. Nomvula tried to interject, offering sarcastic comments about sudden success or luck taking you places, but Zanil didn't flinch. She acknowledged the remarks with a polite nod and quickly steered the conversation back to her achievements, discussing partnerships, innovations, and the team she had nurtured from the ground up. Family members leaned in, genuinely impressed by her clarity and confidence. Zanil could see their eyes flicking between her and Nomvula, noticing the shift in energy at the table. As she spoke, Zanil began weaving in subtle, casual hints about the recording situation. A light laugh here, a knowing glance there, a comment like, It's funny how some moments feel like they're being watched, isn't it? She said it lightly, as if joking, but the words landed like small stones thrown in calm water. Nomvula's smile faltered almost imperceptibly, and Zanil noticed the way her sister's fingers tightened around her fork, the slight tremor in her voice when she tried to make another cutting remark. Zanil's demeanor was magnetic. The calm, collected energy she exuded drew attention, making her look poised and in command while Nomvula grew increasingly uncomfortable. Even distant relatives and family friends started noticing the subtle tension, whispering quietly among themselves. Zanil's presence seemed to fill the room, turning what had been a hostile undercurrent into a display of her composure and strength. She continued to redirect the conversation strategically, asking her parents about their own plans and softly sharing anecdotes about her team's recent creative breakthroughs. Every story reinforced her competence and vision while reminding everyone that she wasn't just talented, she was deliberate, thoughtful, and aware of her surroundings. Nomvula's attempts to regain control of the table kept missing the mark, and Zanil could see the panic flicker in her sister's eyes, like she was realizing her usual tactics wouldn't work today. By the time dessert arrived, Zanil had turned the energy completely. She was no longer just defending herself, she was leading the conversation, gently exposing cracks in Nomvula's composure without raising her voice or losing her grace. It was a subtle victory, but a powerful one. Nomvula shifted in her seat, trying to maintain confidence, but Zanil could see the frustration building, the internal panic that came from realizing the game had changed. For the first time in years, Zanil wasn't the one on the defensive. She was the one setting the rules, and Nomvula's carefully plotted plan was starting to crumble right before her eyes. Zanil's phone buzzed again, and she slid it out under the table, pretending to check a message. Her heart raced as Lindio's name appeared on the screen. One by one, images popped up, live screenshots of Nomvula texting, whispering, and coordinating with someone outside the restaurant. Zanil's stomach clenched. Nomvula wasn't just jealous. She had been planning this, orchestrating hidden cameras, making secret arrangements to record Zanil and use her words, her achievements, even her private life as leverage. A quiet surge of power ran through Zanil. She could feel the pieces falling into place. Nomvula's smirks, the oddly attentive waiter, the perfectly angled camera, they were all part of the setup. But now, Zanil had the evidence, and she didn't need to yell or cause a scene to make the truth clear. Beneath the table, Zanil opened her tablet, activating a discreet app she had built for this exact purpose. In seconds, the live screenshots, the messages, and the camera angles were streaming, silently, to the phones of other diners and even to a few family members' devices. She didn't announce anything. She didn't raise her voice. She simply let the evidence speak for itself. For a moment, everything seemed normal. The chatter, the clinking of cutlery, Nomvula's forced smiles. But then Zanil noticed subtle shifts. Whispers grew louder. Phones buzzed quietly on tables around them. Eyes darted from screens to the family table. Realization spreading like wildfire. Nomvula's confident laugh faltered, her hand froze mid-gesture, and her face went pale. The mask of control she had worn so effortlessly began to crumble. Zanil kept her expression calm, sipping her water, casually mentioning a recent investor meeting, all while letting the evidence do the work. One of their distant relatives nudged another, showing the tablet, and soon the room's energy shifted completely. Confident laughter dissolved into stunned silence, eyes widening, murmurs filling the air. Nomvula's attempts at joking, at smoothing over the situation, fell flat. There was no denying what everyone had just seen. Even her parents, who had seemed oblivious earlier, glanced at the screens, their expressions twisting between shock and disbelief. The realization hit them too, that Nomvula's manipulations, her careful plotting, had been far worse than they had imagined. And in the midst of it all, Zanil sat composed, calm, almost serene, watching the truth unfold. Nomvula opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. The laughter that had once surrounded her like armor vanished, replaced by murmurs of astonishment. Zanil knew the moment had arrived. The hidden game, the betrayal, the secret plotting, all of it was exposed, and there was no way to spin it. She didn't need to raise her voice, didn't need to argue. The evidence, broadcast quietly but strategically, had done everything for her. The room, once filled with cheerful chatter, now held a tense, electrifying silence, and Zanil allowed herself a tiny victorious smile. Today she wasn't just being heard, she was being seen. And everyone, even Nomvula, finally knew the truth. Nomvula's face had gone pale, and her confident posture crumbled as the room absorbed the evidence Zanil had quietly shared. She opened her mouth, trying to explain, but the words sounded hollow. I was just joking, she stammered, her voice uneven. I didn't mean anything by it. It's all misunderstanding. Her excuses fell flat, echoes of desperation bouncing off the walls of the elegant restaurant. Zanil stayed calm, her hands resting lightly on the table, her voice steady and clear as she spoke. Nomvula, these aren't misunderstandings, she said softly, letting the words land like stones in a quiet pond. These messages, she held up her phone. These texts from an anonymous source, Lindio verified them in real time. They show the coordination, the planning, the cameras set up to record me without my knowledge. Every hidden feed, every suspicious gesture. It's all here. She let a pause stretch long enough for people to absorb what she was saying. Zanil didn't raise her voice, didn't yell. She didn't need to. Her calm authority made the story undeniable. This wasn't just a prank or a little jealousy, she continued, keeping her tone even. This was a deliberate attempt to manipulate, to embarrass, and to control private information for personal gain. Some family members leaned closer to peer at the screenshots on her tablet, their expressions shifting from curiosity to shock. I can't believe, one whispered, glancing at Nomvula, who now avoided eye contact with everyone. Another relative muttered under their breath, we never realized how far this went. Some looked embarrassed, realizing they had laughed at Nomvula's cutting remarks, unaware of the malice behind them. Zanil's parents sat frozen, a mix of disbelief and regret on their faces. Their laughter at Nomvula's sarcastic jokes now seemed like complicity in the scheme. Zanil didn't accuse them angrily, she simply let them see the truth for themselves. I've always tried to celebrate our family, to share my achievements with pride, she said softly. But respect and honesty have to go both ways. It's clear that wasn't happening here today. Nomvula shifted uncomfortably, trying one last feeble attempt at justification. I didn't think it would go this far, she whispered, but no one seemed to listen. The room had already shifted. Eyes that once followed her every move now stared at her in disbelief, realizing the lengths she had gone to manipulate, record, and control her own sister. Zanil's composure never wavered. She had stayed calm, collected, and strategic, and now the results were clear. Nomvula's power had evaporated in an instant, replaced by humiliation, and the stark reality of justice served quietly, decisively, and without drama. The room held a tense stillness, punctuated only by murmurs of astonishment, and for the first time that day, Zanil felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. Today, she had not just revealed the truth, she had reclaimed her dignity. The silence after the revelation was heavy, but it allowed everyone to reflect. Zanil's parents sat quietly, their expressions a mix of shock, regret, and realization. For years they had unknowingly, or perhaps unknowingly, favored Nomvula, laughing at her jokes, brushing off her barbed remarks, and failing to see how much pain she had caused Zanil. Now, looking at their older daughter's composed, unwavering presence, the truth hit them like a wave. They could no longer ignore the signs, the subtle manipulations, or the hurt that had been carefully masked behind polite smiles. Zanil watched them carefully, not with anger, but with quiet strength. She understood that this was their moment to see the consequences of their inattention and favoritism. She didn't need to scold or yell. Her calm, clear demeanor spoke volumes. I love this family, she said softly, her voice steady. But love without respect and honesty doesn't protect anyone. It only lets harmful behavior continue. Her parents shifted in their seats, eyes downcast, absorbing the weight of her words. They had finally seen what Zanil had endured, the undermining, the whispered jokes, the jealousy masked as care. For the first time, they understood that by failing to set boundaries and recognize Nomvula's behavior, they had allowed harm to persist. We didn't realize, her father murmured, his voice tight with emotion. We should have noticed sooner. We are sorry, Zanil. Zanil nodded, acknowledging their apology, but she also knew that words alone weren't enough. She had to draw clear boundaries to protect herself in the future. "I appreciate your apology," she said, "but moving forward I need transparency, honesty, and respect. That means no more jokes that belittle me, no favoritism, and no manipulation behind the scenes. If we can agree on that, I'm willing to rebuild trust." Nomvula sat frozen, her carefully crafted confidence shattered. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The scheme she had relied on for so long had completely backfired. The cameras, the planning, the subtle manipulations, all of it had been exposed, and now she could do nothing to recover her standing. Every glance from Zanil, every calm word she spoke, reinforced the stark reality. Nomvula had lost. The room remained tense but charged with a new energy. Family members who had watched silently now nodded in agreement with Zanil, some with shock, some with quiet relief that the truth had finally surfaced. The balance had shifted. Zanil's composure, intelligence, and strategic thinking had turned a moment of potential humiliation into a reckoning that demanded reflection, change, and accountability. By the time dessert was served, the tension had softened into a cautious understanding. Zanil had reclaimed her dignity, her voice, and her power. Her parents had seen their mistakes, and Nomvula had no choice but to absorb the consequences of her actions. The lesson was clear. Respect, honesty, and boundaries weren't optional. They were essential. Zanil's family might never be the same, but for the first time in years, the path forward was clear, and she had taken her place at the center of it with grace and unshakable strength. Zanil stood, smoothing her dress one last time, and gathered her things with calm confidence. The room was quiet, the tension from earlier still lingering, but she walked toward the exit with grace, head held high. As she stepped outside into the warm Pretoria afternoon, her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages poured in from friends, colleagues, and even distant contacts. Words of admiration, pride, and awe at how she had handled the situation. Some were short and excited. "Wow, Zanil! Incredible!" Others were longer, praising her intelligence, calm, and courage. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, letting the sunlight wash over her. This wasn't just a victory over a family trap. It was a personal triumph. She thought about the past few hours, how she had stayed composed while every subtle insult, every hidden camera, and every whispered plan tried to shake her. She realized that it wasn't just luck or timing that had saved her. It was her intelligence, her careful planning, and her ability to remain calm under pressure. Every step had been deliberate, every reaction measured, and every decision guided by strategy. As she walked toward her car, a quiet smile spread across her face. She felt empowered, not because she had exposed Nomvula, but because she had claimed her own worth and refused to let anyone manipulate her life. She had turned fear into control, betrayal into clarity, and a potential humiliation into undeniable triumph. Looking down at her phone one last time, reading the supportive messages flooding in, Zanil thought to herself, a spark of quiet pride in her chest. Some people try to record your life to control it, but knowing your worth turns every camera into your audience. And with that, she stepped into the sunlight, stronger, wiser, and unstoppable.